And I've got 201. So again, welcome in Accessible Web Thursday Office Hours webinar series. We're glad you're here. If you're new, we're so glad you found us. If you've been with us before, I'm glad you're finding value. Thank you so much for coming back. Today's webinars, we're going to be talking about finding a digital accessibility partner and breaking up with one that might not be working out for you. So I'm going to offer a couple of housekeeping items first, and then I'll hand it over to Kelsey. So you should know that we are recording today's session. It will be available if you registered. You'll get an email after the session is complete. You'll also be able to find it on our YouTube channel where we are streaming live today as well. So head on over there, check that out, and subscribe. We also have all of our previous webinars from the past 18 months or so there. So lots of great content to dive into. We will be using the Zoom Q&A and chat today for audience engagement. So feel free to drop your thoughts, ideas, suggestions, questions in there. Also keep an eye out for a coupon code for a 1-month trial of our RAMP software platform. And I think that is about it for me. I will hand it off to you, Kelsey.
Great. Great, thank you. And hi, I'm Kelsey Kloboski. I'm a senior digital accessibility specialist here at Accessible Web and wanted to talk a bit today about finding a third-party accessibility partner and really focusing on identifying when an accessibility partner is working well with you and is going to be supporting your accessibility journey, and maybe some signs that it's not working well and it's time to maybe look for another option. So today we'll be talking about first defining success in digital accessibility, knowing when you need help, choosing an accessibility partner, knowing when to break up with an accessibility partner that's not working, and some tips on having those tricky breakout conversations. So first, of course, I want to talk about defining success in digital accessibility, because it's hard to know whether an accessibility partner is a good partner for you if you don't know where you're going or what you're aiming for. So the key goal for digital accessibility is that people with disabilities can use your content, product, or application with ease. We can get into a lot of details about legal requirements, technical requirements, all of these different pieces, but at the end of the day, the goal of all of those things is in support of this core principle. People with disabilities can use the content, product, or application with ease. And this looks like a lot of different things. What this looks like is employees can work without barriers, customers can sign up, purchase, and pay without barriers, and users can read, interact, and engage without barriers, just to name a few. But really, when we're talking about digital accessibility, we want to be working with someone who's going to be supporting us towards that end goal. We also know that organizations face roadblocks in that goal of finding success with digital accessibility. Two major roadblocks that we see are lack of knowledge and lack of resources. Lack of knowledge can look like gaps in formal education. We definitely talk a lot with developers and web designers who have college degrees in these fields and may not have gotten much of an education about digital accessibility as part of their degree program or as part of their coding boot camps or other formal education they've received in these fields. So we know this is a definite gap that we see often in teams and individuals. There also might be a lack of knowledge just with inexperience of working in digital accessibility or inexperience in understanding or being in community with people with disabilities who are using your products. So these are definitely areas where we see some roadblocks to achieving success in digital accessibility. And lack of resources, this can also look like a lot of different things, like lack of resources in time, funding, or buy-in. And ideally, a strong accessibility partner is going to be able to support you with these roadblocks and helping you overcoming them in order to reach your digital accessibility goals. So knowing when you need help. So definitely some key factors of when you need help are if you don't have in-house digital accessibility expertise, or if your in-house accessibility expertise needs support. And I use that phrase digital accessibility expertise a bit broadly. I know that can look different in different organizations. Some places you may have a single digital accessibility expert, or you may have a team of experts, or you may have that knowledge spread out across all members of your team. And definitely something we see is that particularly if you have a single person or a small team of accessibility experts, is it's hard to impossible to know everything there is to know about every facet of digital accessibility. Because when we're talking about digital accessibility as a whole, we're not just thinking about website content, but also platforms and mobile applications, digital documents, digital media. So there's many facets of digital accessibility, and it's difficult to have expertise in each of those areas. So there may be specific areas of digital accessibility where your in-house expertise may need support with things like workload, knowledge domains, or skill sets. And again, with that focus of getting past those roadblocks to achieving your goals in digital accessibility. So when choosing an accessibility partner, I think there's some really key questions to ask as part of that process. So the first one I would recommend asking is, what is your process for evaluating digital accessibility? And other than evaluation, what kinds of support do you offer? Because we know that there are many roadblocks, not just limited to understanding digital accessibility issues, but potentially supporting you with buy-in, supporting you with training. So some additional questions you can ask are, how can you help me understand my current digital accessibility? Understand and prioritize what needs to be changed, build accessibility knowledge on my team, manage my accessibility improvements over time, and increase buy-in. So knowing it's time to break up, or maybe knowing when, if you're at the start of exploring joining with an accessibility partner, when someone's not going to be a good fit, I have a few red flags and green flags that I wanted to talk about today. So my first red flag is an accessibility partner who never talks about people with disabilities, as opposed to a green flag is a partner who addresses human impact and not just technical requirements. If an accessibility partner is only ever talking to you about WCAG or only ever talking to you about legal requirements and is never bringing or talking about people into the equation and the impacts on people and the viewpoints of the people that are going to be working with your content, working with your product or application, that's definitely a big red flag. Another red flag is a partner who relies solely or primarily on automated scanning tools, as opposed to a green flag, which is a partner who includes manual evaluation and facilitates accessibility testing with people with disabilities. We know that automated scanning tools, while they can be a valuable help and a valuable support, they can't get you all the way to a solid, accessible experience. And so a partner that's primarily or only relying on automated tools is likely not going to be giving you the full picture. Another red flag is a partner who promises quick fixes or, quote, single line of code solutions, as opposed to a green flag of a partner who sets realistic expectations. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more with my last red and green flags. My next red flag is a partner who isn't teaching you about digital accessibility, is not helping to understand the reasons for accessibility improvements or the underlying causes behind it, or helping to support your team in trying to prevent the similar issues being worked in future. As opposed to a green flag is a partner who helps you learn about digital accessibility and comes to their accessibility support as a teaching and learning opportunity. And my final red flag is a partner who guarantees perfect digital accessibility. There's a lot of reasons why this isn't a realistic goal. One of which being that technology is constantly changing. So something that is accessible currently, there might be changes in the future that cause that accessibility to degrade, whether in the technology or in the requirements themselves. And the second really key one that I want to point out is that users with disabilities are a variety of people with all sorts of spectrums of needs in order to access content. So even digital content that meets relevant accessibility requirements, there are going to be users who encounter that content and have some needs that are not being met. So having a process in place, and that's my green flag, is having a partner who supports digital accessibility processes and helps set you up for long-term maintenance and improvement of accessibility and how to respond when users encounter barriers that you didn't predict or didn't realize might come up. These are all things that need to be in place to support your overall digital accessibility rather than as a one and done project. Now you're perfect forever. That's not a realistic goal. So you really need to work with a partner who's going to recognize and support you in the long term. So having those breakup conversations, I know it's never a pleasant conversation when breaking off a partnership. But some things that I would really suggest to keep in mind are to lead with your specific goals and be keeping those front of mind in both your thought process, in your decision making, and in your conversations. To communicate what's missing. If you've had a great working relationship, I think it's perfectly valid to bring up what is it that you're looking for? What is it that you're needed? Is this something that your accessibility partner can provide or can work on with you? And finally, remember that the wrong partner slows down your accessibility efforts. So if there's something that's not working, if there's something that's missing, it's worth it to look for a partner who's going to support you in all the areas that you need in order to create a better accessible experience and to support your goals in a more efficient and timely manner. So how Accessible WED can help? Well, we definitely would love to be your green flag accessibility partner in achieving your digital accessibility goals. We offer several categories of support as part of that. First is our RAMP web accessibility software. This is a tool that offers tools for automated tools for scanning for issues, as well as for managing and understanding your accessibility workload. It's a facet of what we offer, and we use it as a supportive tool. And I believe there's already a discount code or discount information in the chat if you're interested in a trial of that tool. We also offer accessibility audits, which is a comprehensive evaluation of web and mobile applications to identify compliance gaps. And this is a manual review that focuses on human testing of your content and accessibility. Consulting and training, which is expert guidance and training sessions on implementing and maintaining accessibility standards. So that can be webinar style, like we're doing now, or our Accessible Web Academy with self-paced training courses. And we also prepare accessibility conformance reports, typically in the VPAT or Voluntary Product Accessibility Template format. And this provides a clear, accurate, and detailed snapshot of your product's current accessibility based on our manual evaluation completed in the accessibility audit. So that brings us to the end of my prepared remarks. So we're ready for questions and comments. And I'm also curious if anyone has any red flags or green flags that they would add to our list on accessibility partners.
That's awesome, Kelsey. Thank you so much. Super informative. Yeah, I'll be interested to see if anyone has any additions to your list. And I think Gianna is going to be monitoring the chat. You can let us know if we have any questions.
Yes. Thank you very much, Kelsey. That was wonderful. So we have one question in the Q&A here. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A chat there or in the chat itself, and we'll answer those as we get to them. So what signals usually indicate an organization has outgrown DIY accessibility and needs a third-party accessibility partner? This is a good question. So I'd love to get you guys' thoughts on this. I would say if you are getting requests from your clients or you have any hard requirements for conformance, it is always a good idea to kind of tap into that third-party expertise, especially if you don't have in-house experts in accessibility, because while DIY accessibility is a great first step, it can be really hard to know that you're checking all the correct boxes and getting the correct eyes on the situation if you're only doing it in-house. Love to get your thoughts too, though, Kelsey.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think something I think to really monitor would be and from the DIY perspective, would be when you've sort of reached your knowledge limits or what you can accomplish with things. Like there are really helpful accessibility tools out there, like browser extensions and different things. We offer one as well. There's a browser extension with a free aspect where you can scan and try to look for some of those accessibility issues that can be found with automated scanning. So a lot of folks find success with doing some of that DIY on their own to get a better understanding of their current accessibility and to start making some improvements. But we know that a lot of times those strategies they're a great starting point, but there's a lot more to be done. So that could be another great sign is when you've sort of reach the end of those free automated tools, or you know those top 10 practices in digital accessibility, and you've got those kind of going solidly, that can be a great opportunity to reach out to an accessibility partner to kind of move on to the intermediate and advanced areas of digital accessibility. So that can be a great sign of when you're ready to kind of move on from that DIY perspective. Though, of course, we partner with people all the time that haven't done any of the DIY stuff yet, and they are needing help getting started with those very first steps. So any point is a good time to partner with it, but I think definitely when you reach the end of kind of free or kind of self-education parts where you sort of feel like you're reaching the edge of your knowledge or the edge of your confidence, that's also a great time to reach out.
I certainly agree. And then we got a couple other interesting questions here. Do you have any strategies to increase buy-in within an organization that needs to increase accessibility efforts? So I'd say this is going to vary a little bit organization to organization, and it depends on some of the kind of resistance that you're facing. Certainly, there is the this is the right thing to do aspect of it, but we understand that that does not always move the needle for leadership when you're trying to increase buy-in. So it can also be helpful to tap into kind of the potential return on investment associated with accessibility, especially if you are getting questions about accessibility in the procurement process, or if it may become a hard requirement for any of your contracts. So, for example, if you sell into organizations that fall under Title II of the ADA because they take public funding, now would be a really good time to start thinking about accessibility and leveraging those upcoming updates to motivate action within your organization to get the organization prepared for those incoming deadlines. So you're not kind of caught unprepared by any of your current customers or prospective customers when they need to find a vendor that has ensured conformance with their products in order to comply with Title II. And then additionally, sometimes it can be helpful to actually highlight some of the existing barriers in the application, if there are any known barriers that have not been remediated, and to highlight the kind of human impact that those might have. So if there are barriers that could prevent a user with a disability from accessing information or goods, it's important to highlight that because it not only is it a legal risk, but it's also providing a subpar, not usable experience for some of your users, which hopefully for organizations is not something that you want to see happening. Anybody else have anything to add to this one? Okay.
Well, this is Kelsey, and I think some pieces I want to add, and certainly, and this is echoing something that Gianna had, is definitely see different individuals or different sort of roles within organizations may be motivated by different reasons in terms of improving buy-in or trying to support buy-in. But as Gianna was saying, like definitely working on accessibility and trying to implement it from the ground up or incorporate it into processes is also going to be overall a less expensive process. Like the sooner you get started on accessibility, the less expensive it is, the less time consuming it is, the more efficient it is, and all those pieces. So there are business and ROM impacts to waiting on accessibility or waiting until you get a requirement or you get a complaint.
Yes.
It's going to be more expensive and more time costly to do it then. And I think to me, and again, depending on what people are motivated on, and I would love if this was always the perfect way to get people on board, but the user impact piece I think is so critical. And engaging with, if you have funding or time to do some assessment, is to engaging with people with disabilities to do testing and like recorded sessions or things like that. That can have a really big impact to see the real effects of lack of remediation in terms of what real users experience in that environment. And it can be really powerful and really illustrates the core issue and gets back to that again, that original defined success of real people need to be able to use this with ease without barriers. So sometimes highlighting like this is where we're falling short of that goal in a way that is observable and understandable to people, that it doesn't match their own personal lived experience, can sometimes be a really powerful way to help people understand why it's important and that it's beyond, really encourage people to think of it beyond just a checklist, that maybe we use checklists for monitoring and for documentation and things, but that the end goal is much bigger than that.
Thank you, Kelsey. And I totally agree. And that's a great point there. I've seen that be effective in some organizations as well. I know that some use that to help motivate buy-in across teams. So which can be super helpful is to illustrate the kind of lived impact of not remediating issues or not doing the due diligence to assess where the issues lie. How do we reset internal confidence after a failed accessibility partnership? It's an interesting question. Um, I've not specifically thought about this question, but I'd say, sometimes you gotta just try and try again. Just because it did not work with your first partner doesn't mean that you can give up on accessibility entirely. There are real users who are impacted by this, and often contractual obligations associated with accessibility that are critical for your business. So you're going to want to find a way to tackle this one way or another. I would say bring in more stakeholders. Into the decision-making process, allowing them to be a part of the selection of your new accessibility partner and kind of have their voices heard in that selection process so that you're kind of avoiding the pitfalls that you ran into with your previous partner might be helpful here. As well as creating maybe an internal guild around accessibility so you can have these conversations on a more ongoing basis and be clear about what everybody across teams needs in terms of support in this area.
Excuse me, it's Heather here. I would say also maybe even shifting the perspective a little bit from considering a failure to considering it like, okay, well, now we know what's not going to work,
Yep.
or we have actually, it's informed us going forward, what our needs actually are,
Yep.
and how a partner might be able to meet those differently next time around. So, I feel like anytime you try is not really a failure. And
No,
I know that can come down to just semantics, but I think it can inform the process going forward too. And that might, help it just feel a little
I
softer.
agree. I agree.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a breakup in that case. While it might be a little painful organizationally at first, it's also a learning experience and it's an opportunity to find a partner who better fits your needs as an organization around accessibility. I can think of some instances with our current and past clients where this has been the case for them. We had somebody come to us after two different failed accessibility partnerships where they had audits done with other providers, and there was just discrepancies between different rounds of auditing. There was real challenges around tracking issues and remediation. And then the second round of auditing also yielded inconsistent results. So they were feeling pretty frustrated by the process. And then we were able to work together, and we have here at Accessible Web, if you worked with us, we have a very consistent and repeatable and transparent audit process where we're delivering not via spreadsheets so that issues can be tracked more granularly and more accurately without as much room for confusion or misalignment in the handoff process. And so that's worked a lot better for them because consistency between rounds of auditing has added confidence to their team so that they can be confident that accessibility auditing is not something that is just done ad hoc, at least not the way that we approach it here, and they can get consistent results across rounds of review.
Yeah, this is Kelsey. I think asking those questions about process, I think, is really valuable for seeing if you think an accessibility partner's process is going to work well for your team.
Mhm.
And then especially if you've had a failed partnership or a partnership that didn't yield the results that you wanted, can help you identify if there's trouble points of like,
Yep.
okay, this new partner has some points in their process where it's going to head off the issues that we encountered with this other partner.
Yeah.
Or maybe they answer the question and they aren't addressing those needs that you have, in which case you can keep looking and hopefully feel more confident when you do take that step of formalizing a contract or a relationship with a third-party accessibility specialist.
Yeah, thank you. How can a transition period be handled without increasing legal risk or compliance with legal or compliance risk? This is also a really interesting question. So often we have, I mean, there's assuming where you're continuing to do your due diligence to stay on top of any accessibility feedback you are getting and to make improvements at whatever speed your team has the availability of results and the resources to remediate things. You should stay in a fairly defensible position throughout any transitions between partners. Often when we have customers coming to us that have not had a previous accessibility partner, and they may have immediate or even like past due requests for accessibility documentation. We'll start out by just making it clear what our plan and our roadmap for the engagement is. So we can provide things like a letter of engagement and a project roadmap potentially so that they can share it with relevant stakeholders or customers that are asking about their approach to accessibility, so that there's just transparency about when they can expect more specific reporting, audit results, and remediation progress, and so forth. Additionally, there are some accessibility kind of like best practices and considerations that you can implement without having a partner or at the very onset of working with a new partner. So here at Accessible Web, one of the things we like to make sure that any new customer that we sign up for has in place is a accessibility page, an accessibility statement, and a feedback mechanism so that if users encounter a barrier, they can reach out, report that issue, get reasonable accommodations, and so that the issue can be properly documented and resolved, hopefully, so that they can then go back to that customer and provide positive updates on that issue that was reported. That's kind of best practice for any time that you may not be in a perfectly accessible state, because it allows users to stay in communication with you without having to escalate things in places you don't want them to go.
Yeah, this is Kelsey. That I think a customer report on an accessibility barrier is worth its weight in gold.
Yes.
So keep those pathways open, regardless of what your status is in terms of your accessibility partnerships or accessibility work, is keep
Yep.
those communication channels open because it's so valuable.
It is.
And lets you manage that well, provide good customer service, and then improve that issue so that future customers don't encounter that same barrier.
Yeah, absolutely. And an additional step that is appropriate anytime, but might serve you particularly well during a transition phase would be always be prepared to offer an accommodation in the face of something that can't be remediated or resolved right away if it's reported. So inform yourself, learn about providing accommodations and what those might look like, and be in a position and ready to be able to say, okay, we can't fix this right now. We're working on it. And can we help you complete this transaction another way? Or can we email you this document in accessible format? Or, whatever that customer indicates might work best for them in the moment. Because chances are they just want to get something done and not really cause you trouble. And
Yeah.
so being in a position to know that you do have an obligation to provide accommodation, and then knowing, what some of those might look like and how you would tackle that, I think will also help keep you in a much more comfortable place.
I agree. I certainly agree. You always want to be open to that feedback and be prepared to offer those reasonable accommodations. It is kind of the first line of defensibility, whether or not you have a current partner or seeking a current partner or transitioning between partners. It's really important that you maintain that feedback channel with your users, because if you don't have any feedback channel with your users, it just leads to increased frustration. It shows that you're not as responsive in that area. It's not great customer service, and it increases potential legal risk if a customer who otherwise just wants to get something done has to move things kind of up the chain and get kind of can't even remember the word, litigious about the issue because they're not able to get what they need from your organization just via reaching out or providing feedback. Awesome. So kind of good timing here. We are right at 2:30, and I think that is all the current questions in Q&A. Thank you so much today for the presentation, Kelsey, and for helping host Heather. This was a really fantastic and important one. Choosing accessibility partner can kind of be a confusing landscape. We know that there's a lot out there, and there are a lot of different players in this field with really different ethos. So if you have any questions further on this topic, or you just want to chat about your specific project or organizational needs, please feel free to reach out to us. We are readily available on our website, and we are also here every week on Thursdays, or almost every week on Thursdays, for office hours and our webinar series. So please feel free to join us again next week. All right. Thank you so
Awesome.
much, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.